Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's PAYE Modernisation webinar. This webinar has been designed specifically for employers, where we will look back on the PAYE modernisation journey so far. To start off today, I'm going to introduce our panellists. So first up, we have Paul Byrne, and Paul is the Managing Director of Thesaurus Software. After qualifying as a Chartered Accountant, Paul went on to set up and manage his own accountancy practice. Paul co-founded Thesaurus Software in 1991 with the goal of providing payroll software to Irish businesses. Thesaurus Software now provides quality software products that are used to process a payroll for over 250,000 businesses across Ireland and the UK. Thesaurus Software have two different payroll packages to choose from. There's Thesaurus Payroll Manager and our newer payroll software, BrightPay. For part two of today's webinar, we will be joined by Tim Cook, who is a business development executive here at Thesaurus Software. Tim will take you through a quick overview of BrightPay Connect, and he will demonstrate how some of our newest automation and time-saving features can improve the efficiency of your business. We're delighted to welcome our guest speaker, Sinead Sweeney, who is the PAYE Modernisation Change Manager at Revenue. Sinead is very much on the front line when it comes to PAYE modernisation, and will also deliver a presentation today to discuss what has happened since PAYE modernisation has gone live and what challenges businesses are facing. So welcome, Sinead. For our Q&A session, we will have Paul and Tim and Sinead, and joining our presenters, we have Audrey Mooney from the support team here at Thesaurus Software. All in all, today the presentations and demos should take just over 1 hour. We'll try to leave as much time as we can at the end to answer any questions you may have, making up the 90-minute slot today. Just to note, if you do have any questions, you can type them into the questions box on your control panel at the right of the screen, and we will try to get through as many questions as possible. This webinar is being recorded, and all attendees will receive an email later today with the link to the recording. So it is no problem if you do need to leave at any stage. Also in the email later today, there will be a copy of the presentation slides that we are using today, or you can also download the slides right now if you wish on the Handouts tab on your control panel. Today's webinar is CPD accredited, so if you wish to receive a CPD certificate, please fill in the survey at the end of the webinar, or if you happen to miss the survey or cannot stay until the very end, there will be a link in the follow-up email later today, which will allow you to request a CPD certificate. So now that all the housekeeping is out of the way, we may as well get straight into the webinar. So I'm now going to pass you over to Paul for part one, PAYE modernisation 1 year on, was it a success?
Okay, thank you, Rachel, and thank you for joining us, everyone. The introduction of PAYE modernisation, which we refer to here on in as PMod, in January 2019, changed the way employers submit payroll information to Revenue. PMod has brought with it new and more stringent rules around when and how often we need to send payroll data to Revenue. All employers, regardless of size, have to comply with the new real-time reporting system. First up today, I'm going to look back on the PMod journey so far. I'll also review some of the most common mistakes employers have made to date, and that flows easily in for me to talk about non-compliance and penalties, everybody's favourite subject. At the end of the presentation, you can judge whether it has been a success or not. Before all that, I'm going to very quickly go back to the basics of PMod, and I'll keep it brief as you should already know all this, and I know that Sinead has a fair bit to go through with you. To do this, I have 6 quick-fire questions that I'm going to answer. Okay, why was it introduced? In a nutshell, so that Revenue would have much more up-to-date information than heretofore, meaning that employees' tax credits would be more accurate and employers' PAYE liabilities would be known much sooner. Also, it enables employees to view their tax record and My Account in more or less real time. What is an RPN? Well, an RPN is like the old P2C file and contains the tax credits and cut-off points for all employees. Because of the direct link with ROS, these can be easily retrieved before each pay run. What is a PSR? Well, a PSR is basically like a mini P35, which is submitted on or before each pay run. In most cases, PSOs are submitted either weekly or monthly. How does payroll software help? Well, where payroll software includes direct revenue integration, this means that an employer can directly connect with revenue systems from within the payroll software itself. This integration can help with both RPN retrieval and the PSR submission. So basically RPNs are retrieved and PSRs are sent more or less at the click of a button. So what does this mean for new employees? Well, looking at employees commencing a new employment, employers are required to notify revenue of any new employees, and this was a big downfall of the old PAYE system, where employers were not registering new employees correctly. With PMod, employers can request an RPN for any new employees before they are paid, which can be done instantly from within the payroll software. Similarly, for employees who are leaving their employment, once a leave date is entered in the payroll software, this leaver information will automatically be included in the PSR for the relevant pay period. How does an employer know the amount due to revenue? Revenue issues employers within the ROS system with a monthly statement based on the submissions made by the employer. This statement gives them a summary and breakdown of the total liability due based on the payroll submissions sent to revenue every pay period. When the monthly statement is available, employers have the option to view the statement, accept the statement, or amend the payroll submission. If no action is taken, the statement will automatically be deemed as a return. The employer does not need to manually accept each monthly statement. Regardless of the pay frequency, the revenue payment due dates and method of payment remain the same for all employers. There's also a new option for employers to set up a variable direct debit, which basically means that revenue will take the required payment each month without you having to do anything else. This can be very handy if, like me, you forget to log in and process the payment. So the story so far. So now that we've covered the basics, let's look at the PMod journey so far. Well, PMod is now in full force, with the majority of employers having seamlessly transitioned to the new reporting system. From January to date this year, some 177,000 employers have successfully submitted over 5.2 million payroll submissions in respect of over 2.9 million employees. The story so far for employers. Direct integration, also known as APIs, enables different software applications to communicate with each other. In our case, it allows our payroll software to directly interact with revenue systems. So instead of the very manual routines of downloading or uploading, selecting file locations, logging in screens and all of that, there will be just one submit button to replace all of this. For employers, this integration has proven to reduce the actual workload required each pay period in comparison to the old PAYE system, bringing users time savings and a much more fluid experience each pay period. Employers are also saving time on the eliminated P forms. P60s, P45s, P46s, P30s, and P35s are no longer required, but other than the P35 back in February of this year. The story so far for employees. One of the main objectives of PMod was to ensure that employees pay the correct amount of tax for the tax year. Employees' tax records are now more accurate, especially for those with multiple employments, meaning less under or over payment of tax and maximum use of the entitlements that the employees will be entitled to. In May of this year, Revenue turned their focus to employees. All employees now have full visibility of pay and tax information as reported by their employer through their My Account. At the end of the year, an employment summary will also be available through My Account, replacing the P60. Employers should be aware that employees can now view any discrepancies between payroll details on the employee's payslip and those reported to Revenue. It is therefore very much in every employer's interest to ensure that the data submitted to Revenue is accurate and in line with the employee's payslip record. The story so far for accountants. Speaking to a few payroll bureaus and accountants to find out how they have found the new system, the general consensus was that the first couple of months were quite challenging. As well as implementing a new system, there was also the P35 deadline for the 2018 tax year and VAT return deadlines and all that sort of stuff. There was also the issue of educating clients and changing their ways. Simple things such as making sure the client notified them of the payroll before they actually made a payment. Over the past few months, however, many are now starting to see the benefits of a more simplified process. A frequent comment from accountants was due to net to gross and how they are noticing some employees who are allocating credits elsewhere. And the real-time reporting has highlighted just how expensive this can work out to be for the employer. Although both Thesaurus and BrightPay can cater for net to gross payments, we do recommend that it is avoided if at all possible. Other feedback I received from accountants has been quite positive, with many feeling that it has made their jobs easier. The clients have been warned well in advance about the new rules, and it has cut out a lot of the toing and froing that they would have had in the past. The timeliness and accuracy of the information supplied by clients has generally improved. There are still some employers processing payroll manually. Revenue stats suggest that up to 10% of employers are still calculating and submitting their payroll manually. There is quite a bit involved in this, and there's a lot that can go wrong. For these employers, for their sanity alone, never mind the huge time savings, it should become apparent that they should either be using the services of a payroll bureau or that they should be using payroll software. So issues, challenges and mistakes. Although there are a lot of benefits overall, any new system is going to have teething problems. And I think most of us have faced a challenge along the way, not just employers, but even payroll software providers and revenue. So what were the challenges for the payroll software providers? Well, for us, I'm sure you've noticed that there were quite a few upgrades in the first few months after the initial release. And this was because of the inability to test various scenarios properly. Revenue did provide us with a test system, but we weren't able to test some scenarios on it. For example, one example of an unexpected challenge was issues due to regional settings. We had one customer who had the regional settings set to Swiss and had picked up the decimal point as a comma, so the return was coming back as 100 times the liability in those cases. The top 10 mistakes seen by revenue. Well, looking at employers now here on the screen, I have the top 10 most common errors seen by revenue. I'm not going to go into each of these because I'm going to look at things more so from a payroll software point of view and the problems which resulted in the most calls to our support line. In saying that, some of revenue's top mistakes overlap with our own scenarios. So I have Audrey, our support manager, here with us, and she is much more knowledgeable in these things than I am. So just looking at the first issue there, the revenue we're talking about, as they see more commonly, employers mistakenly sending the payroll data to revenue more than once. I don't think that's really an issue with the software that we have. But
yeah, I think we're looking at our handling of the line item ID that it doesn't change, and revenue has a safety net that they won't accept the same line item ID twice.
Okay, yeah. Employers incorrectly creating duplicate employments for the same employee. I think this was part of the initial teething problems, and this was down to, was it employers? Maybe
employers logging into Ross and registering an employee, and it also being registered through the payroll, and then employees logging onto my account and registering it, and revenue had an issue where they were doubling up. So they did have a hot topics document on it, but that's more or less gone.
It's calmed down now. Yeah. Payroll submissions or part of payroll submissions failing the validation process. Well, again, I think our software will generally catch any issues before they're submitted, so we will generally alert the user to any issue which is going to cause validation process.
If there's something missing or wrong, they'll be alerted before they, won't allow them to try and send it.
Employers ceasing employment for employees in error by incorrectly including cessation dates in payroll submissions. Again, I think that's probably down to user error, really, is it?
Yeah, we've even had one this morning where they see somebody in week 43, but they've been paying them ever since. You find it hard to believe how these things happen, but they do. And then we've also seen cases where employees have ceased the employment because maybe they're on temporary layoff, but the employer isn't aware that they have ceased it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of employers are unaware that employees can actually do that as well.
Yeah, it's a phone call or my account, this is two different ways of employees ceasing employment.
Okay. Employers failing to apply the most up-to-date RPN when running payroll. Well, I think that's probably a case maybe the user is ignoring the warnings that come up within the payroll software that you need to actually
because both
download.
products do alert you every time, but there's people maybe that don't click on it every time.
Maybe they just assume that nothing's going to have changed from last week.
Where we don't actually know.
Employees being taxed on the emergency tax basis where an RPN is available. And again, I think this is probably, again, them just not downloading the latest RPN.
Yeah, or they could download the RPN before they've set up a new employee, for example, so they're on emergency, but actually an RPN would have been available had they checked.
Okay. Incorrect operation of emergency tax. For example, employee reported with emergency tax, but no tax deducted by the employer. I think this is probably an override, maybe somebody's done within the software.
We have to assume that it is, yeah.
Okay. Gross pay shown as less than pay for income tax and or pay for USC. I know BrightPay in the initial months did have an issue in that it wasn't adjusting for the employee's pension, wasn't adding it back effectively to cover the gross
any allowable deductions. Unfortunately, we're reducing the gross pay, so that was rectified.
Yeah. No USC deducted where the employee is not USC exempt, and similarly USC deducted where the employee is USC exempt.
I think again it has to be an override really.
Yeah. And this one is completely out of the scope of our software, where employers were paying their tax liability twice in error, for example, by setting up both a ROS debit instruction and a variable direct debit for the same payment period. I think this might have been due to maybe some of the ROS screens being a little bit confusing initially.
I think as well, if people do it early, they're really expecting to see it being paid, but they won't take it until the 23rd, and then they go and they pay it again.
Yeah.
And revenue probably loves that.
Yeah. Okay, so just moving on to some of the other big issues for us. One of them was digital certs, and this led to quite a few support calls. There were quite a few different situations involving digital certs. Essentially, the employer's or the agent's digital cert is required and needs to be installed on the computer for the API integration to work with revenue system. In the UK, employers just needed login credentials, which worked a lot more seamlessly. So this is probably one, in my opinion, downfall of PMod. First, there's digital certs and networks. Where the cert is stored in a shared network, it was causing problems with users putting in their own cert, and they would then need to keep installing the cert every time. In this scenario, you need to install an administrator cert on each computer, and we have this highlighted on our website, but there was still a few calls onto support about this. Another challenge with digital certs is that there might be a certificate issued for an employer or agent where the cert isn't actually active on the API system until the following day. So this again resulted in quite a few calls to support. Employers manually making changes in ROS. So another issue we came across is if an employer logs into ROS and makes entries or changes manually to a line item, for example, it doesn't sync back to the payroll software. So the software has no way to recognize that this change has been made, and it has caused some issues. It's important that employers avoid making changes manually and instead do them through the payroll software. Sometimes employers incorrectly created duplicate employments for the same employee where the employee was listed more than once on the RPN. And this issue has since been resolved, but again, it was the result of employers logging into ROS and registering a new employee online instead of through the payroll software. Employers with multiple branches, but they didn't have any additional registered numbers. Some employers also found it challenging when there were multiple branches with the same prem. It was only in the first few weeks when the second branch submitted the PSR, it was showing up as a duplicate line item ID. To avoid this, employers with a number of branches needed to register for additional prems. This was expected, but unfortunately some employers were not aware that it would be an issue. Incorrect details on the RPN. Well, many employers noticed that some employees were put on an emergency basis, and this happened where revenue wasn't aware of certain situations. Again, this scenario was resolved within the first few weeks. There was also the scenario where the RPN retrieved from revenue had incorrect details, or where the employer or payroll bureau recognized that the information included on the RPN was incorrect, and there was often a delay in getting the RPN amended as the revenue helplines were quite busy at the time. Confusion over pay periods. Well, the concept of pay date has been quite testing for some employers. The pay date is when the payment is actually made, and this is all that revenue is interested in. So a payment made, say, on the 5th of January 2019, even if it was for work performed in a previous week in December, should be included on a 2019 PSR. So many employers found themselves a week out of sync because of their previous misunderstanding. And I suppose, Audrey, this is probably something that we have to be aware of that might happen again this year, in that it's basically if somebody wants to do a double payment in...
Yeah, I suppose quite commonly for weekly paid employees, they would get a double week at the end of this year, and they wouldn't get paid then in week 1 of 2020. I suppose revenue stamps are, their guidelines are that if you make the payment in 2019, then it is a 2019 payment, and there won't be any additional credits or cut-off points because it's still part of your week 52, unfortunately.
Yeah, and those employers wouldn't really be qualified to add a week 53 into the payroll.
No, and revenue will know from previous submissions that a week 53 wouldn't be due.
So it's really one to watch out for, and I suppose our advice is for that additional week to be paid maybe as early as possible in 2020
rather than paid in 19.
Yeah, so it does have a 2020 payment date, and therefore it's included on the 2020 PSR with a full week's tax credits.
Cut-off points and insurable week. Yeah. So we will do up some guidelines on that. We're just waiting for some from revenue.
Okay. Another issue we had during the year, and some has happened probably on a few occasions recently as well, is an issue with revenue downtime, or probably more correctly, we want to term it slow time. In these cases, PSRs were being sent, but there was no response, so the software wouldn't know if it was actually submitted to revenue or not. An easy solution within the software is that you can check revenue record, which is in the utilities menu, but it did result in quite a few calls to our helpline. There's also an issue with old Windows XP computers, as they are not compatible with the new security measures that are needed for the revenue integration to work. Although we did announce that we would no longer be supporting Windows XP users, it came as quite a shock to some customers as they had to go out and buy a new PC or laptop. Payroll backups. It is very important to take backups of payroll data with PMod. If for any reason the computer crashed or you couldn't recover it from the computer, it can be very challenging to backdate the payroll data so that the periodic submissions to revenue are correct. We have an optional cloud backup add-on for both of our payroll products, Source Connect and BrightPay Connect, and these allow you to seamlessly back up your payroll data to the cloud. To help our customers with PMod, we gave all customers one free Connect license with every payroll purchase this year. Now, non-compliance and penalties. So moving on to non-compliance. So non-compliant employers can expect revenue intervention with non-compliance penalties and fines. Where errors arise, employers should immediately rectify them to ensure that mistakes are not included in future payrolls. Early action can also reduce the possibility of revenue intervention. It's important to note also that if there is a constant pattern of corrections, or if there's a pattern of late submissions for a particular employer, revenue may take corrective actions such as site visits or audits. Where an employer fails to engage with revenue or persistently breaches the PAYE regulations, it will result in interest due by the employer. The current penalty regime includes a fixed penalty of €4,000 for each breach of the PAYE regulations. It also includes a fixed penalty of €3,000 imposed on the company secretary for each breach. So these penalties can be imposed on a per item basis. So even if you're a mid-sized employer, the penalties can really build up. At present, from what we hear, revenue's priority seems to be more directed at interventions such as site visits, where they see a constant pattern of errors or delayed submissions. In other words, they would have been trying to help and educate employers as much as possible. I would imagine that this approach will not continue indefinitely, and we can expect to see the fines regime starting soon. So can it be considered a success? Well, taking everything we have discussed into account today, I think that PMod can be considered a success. Although we did look at many challenges, any new system is going to have a certain level of issues until it is fully bedded down. The first couple of months were very challenging for employers, for payroll bureaus, for payroll software providers, and even for revenue. But in the few months since then, I think we are really starting to see the benefits of the new system. When we compare it to the UK system, there were some very distinct challenges. The UK uses cumulative submissions, so any corrections to previous periods are simply adjusted for in the latest cumulatives, whereas in Ireland, a correction submission usually must be made for the actual period itself. The UK used a much simpler authentication, whereas in Ireland we had to grapple with digital certs. In the UK, there was a pilot year where employers could voluntarily use the new system. In Ireland, it was the Big Bang approach, and the test system provided for developers did not adequately handle real-time scenarios. In the UK, submissions can only be made by the payroll, whereas in Ireland, multiple sources can affect the online record. Often as a result, payroll and ROS will be out of sync. We now look forward to the transition to 2020, and we will all be keeping our fingers crossed that employees' year-end statements do not highlight any fundamental issues with the payroll submissions made during the year. So that's it from my part of today's webinar. And I'm now going to pass you over to Tim, who will discuss briefly how BrightPay's Connect cloud platform can improve your efficiency.
Thank you very much, Paul and Audrey. That was very informative. So I'm just going to cover the Connect, which is the cloud add-on that operates alongside your BrightPay Payroll Manager. And just to mention it, it's also available to source payroll also. So BrightPay Connect, as I mentioned, is a cloud-based add-on that operates alongside your BrightPay Payroll Manager, and it streamlines a lot of the payroll processes for you, the employer. And it also provides a whole range of HR and annual leave management services that when the whole system is utilized will really save you, the employer, and all your admin staff a whole lot of time. And just from the outset, I just want to make a note that we can see here there's the app is available for employees to download for free on the mobile phone to avail of all these self-service options and portals that I go into now in quite some detail. So you, the employer, will simply invite employees that you wish to bring on to Connect by sending them an email, because remember, all their email addresses have been inputted into the BrightPay Payroll Manager, and this all flows seamlessly across into Connect. So a couple of clicks and the employees can be invited onto Connect. They create their own usernames and passwords and avail of all the self-service options and portals. So we'll have a brief look here now at the employer view to start. So this is the view that you are familiar with on your BrightPay Payroll Manager, and because Connect has been activated for this employer, the cloud icon in the top right-hand corner is now green. And this means that every 15 minutes, and again every time you log out of BrightPay, your payroll data is being backed up to Microsoft Azure, so you never have to worry about losing your payroll data. And as Paul just highlighted a moment ago, this is hugely important for various reasons in light of PMod. So if I click onto the green cloud icon, we can see here there's one option where we can restore from the cloud all our backups, because our backups, as I mentioned, are taken in chronological order every 15 minutes, and again every time you log out. So if you ever needed to avail of any of the backups, that can simply be done by clicking here. And then we can configure the self-service options for the employees, and that's very easily done there. But now we'll have a quick look at the employer's dashboard. So if we click on this is our employer's dashboard, where we have 3 tabs across the top, and I'll go into all of these, but basically you can see here that we are on the cloud. So this means that we can access Connect from any computer in the office or at home, or we can, if we were remotely outside the office on our laptop, we can also access Connect. So that gives us great flexibility for accessing payslips and running payroll reports anywhere at any time. So before I click into the employer, we'll just go into users, because this is an important section, because these are all the users that have access to Connect. And you doing the payroll and the employer will have full access and decide what permissions these users will have. And we can add users simply by clicking here on add. And we have two types of users. We have administrators. So administrator is typically you just doing the payroll, or a member of staff of your organization that would be given access to everything. And then we have standard users. And this is great functionality here, because if I click into Alan Sawyer here, for example, we can see that Alan Sawyer, he is been ticked off as being a standard user, and he works with this company here, Alan's Auto Repairs. And we can see here in the permissions where Alan has been given all permissions, actually, in this example, where he can view payslips and reports, and he can approve employee requests. And that's important, and I'll come back to that in a little while shortly. But also we'd have great flexibility in the essence where we can bring on external parties as users also. For example, an accountant. So an accountant, obviously, for obvious reasons, isn't going to be approving employee requests, but may want to see financial information, including payslips and reports. So we can add an external user as an accountant, where they can access that information remotely from their own office. And these permissions section really gives you the total flexibility to add any number of users going forward. So I just click back into the employers tab here, because now we can go into, in this example, Alan's Auto Repairs, and see the full suite of options that are available to yourself, the employer. So in this example, as I mentioned, we have Alan's Auto Repairs, and all these tabs across the top, I go into them in quite some detail. But from the offset, we can see here that all our notifications come in here on the left under the notifications section here. So any leave requests that come in from our employees, or if their employees are changing their details, we can simply approve or reject them here. We can view the employer details here on our right, and if our amounts due to revenue will simply appear here also, which just gives great transparency at all times. And if there is any upcoming leave in the calendar, it simply would have appeared here. And the great thing too about this, if I click on the cog wheel, we can see where we can view all recent employee requests, because it's all date and timestamped in the audit trail who approved the requests and when. And in this example, if Neville's leave had been rejected, this box simply would have appeared in red. So the next tab I click onto here is the Employees tab. So this gives us a very quick access to all our employees in the organization. So that's great if we needed to access their payslips or look up their contact details, address and phone number, etc. And when we want to send out the invite to all the employees, that's very easily done. As I mentioned, we've already inputted their email addresses into BrightPay Payroll. So that all, as I mentioned, flows seamlessly across into Connect. So a couple of clicks up here and we can invite the employees onto Connect to avail of all the self-service options. And we'll have a look at the employees' point of view shortly also. So the next tab we click onto is the Reports tab. So this gives you access to run all your payroll reports 24/7, even when you're outside the office, be it at home or on the go, as I mentioned, on your laptop. You can access and run all your payroll reports. And as I mentioned, if you made an external user, like an accountant, a user of Connect, they could also access these reports too, saving you or eliminating the need for you to be sending over to your accountant recurring payroll reports. So if we click into the payroll summary, for example, it's very easy to use, because from the drop-down menu, we can select a month or week or fortnightly that we wish to run the payroll report for. And if you wanted to select all employees, or we could just select particular employees and quickly run the report. And here we go, all this data is just all populated by you in your BrightPay Payroll Manager, but now it's all available on Connect. And we can simply download this as PDF or CSV and export. So the next tab I click onto is the Calendar tab. So I won't get into the whole HR and annual leave management systems just yet, but by having this calendar, it gives you or some members of your staff in your employer's organization a very quick and handy overview of the leave status in the organization in any given week or month. And the great thing is about this, if I leave my mouse hovering over a particular date, for example, here the 22nd, we can see where Bruce is on sick leave that day. So when employees are requesting leave, we can quickly have a look at, maybe see what other employees are off that day and whether the request is actually feasible. So the next tab I click onto is the revenue tab. So again, this just from a best practice governance point of view, it presents the facts and figures in an open and transparent way where you or any colleagues that you've given permission to can go in and view the amounts that are due to revenue. So really a very handy and powerful feature. The next tab I click onto is the documents tab. So actually by having Connect, it actually enables you to have a documents distribution portal where you can upload and distribute various documents to your employees, be it company-wide, department-wide, or just to specific employees. So for example, we can upload our company handbooks or specific contracts of employment for your employees that only that they can see, or any general company information. And if, for example, we had a new health and safety document had to go out to all the employees and it had to be seen by all the employees, the great thing is we can simply click here on add to upload the document, and this little eye icon at the very end, that enables us to and tells us exactly who opened the document and when, so we can get great transparency there, making sure that every employee has opened and seen that document. The next tab I click onto is the settings tab, because this is where you can view your employer details. You can upload your previous tax year data and configure the self-service options for the employees, and the calendar, if you should wish to, could be enabled or disabled. However, it's important to note that having this calendar and the HR leave management actually will eliminate the need for you to get a third-party HR and leave management provider, because this is all included within Connect. So it's really fantastic. So if I click into the employer details, we can see here that this is where you, the employer, will upload your own logo onto Connect. So every time that your employees log into Connect, it's your logo that they see. And especially in the modern working environment, this is hugely important with employee retention, because you're providing your employees with this fantastic service of being able to get all their pay slips onto the free app on their smartphone, view employee requests for holiday leave, and view all their HR documents. So that really helps to lock in the employees into your organization. So speaking of employees, we'll now have a quick look at the employee view of Connect. So when your employees are invited onto Connect, this is the screen that they are brought to. And the great thing about this is that the technology is here. Should the employee forget their password, they can simply click here to renew passwords. So it saves them chasing you, the employer, trying to renew passwords, and that, because the technology is there for them to do so. So they create their own username and password and they click go. And so this is the employee's dashboard. And in this example, we have Matthew Ward, and we have the 4 tabs across the top, and I go into all of them. But basically, this dashboard is very intuitive and easy to use, much like your own dashboard, the employer's dashboard, where we have, again, notifications appearing here on the left. The employee, Matthew, in this example, can view all his details, PPS number, etc., that you, the employer, has for him. And he can update his details here very easily too. And if Matthew had any upcoming leave on the calendar in September, it would simply have appeared here. But the very handy thing is Matthew can view all his annual leave that he's booked off so far this year. And from there, Connect is actually automatically calculating and providing Matthew with all his annual leave that he has remaining there. So you can see that at a quick view. And when Matthew's payslips, when he gets a notification about his payslips, when they're ready to be retrieved, he'll also get a standard email notifying him that his payslips are now ready to be retrieved from Connect. So he could simply click here to log into Connect, or he could actually access it via his app on his smartphone. So the next tab I click onto for the employees is the Documents tab. So this is where, under payroll documents, Matthew can view all his payslips, because they're all stored here in chronological order. And the great thing about this is that if Matthew was going for a loan or a mortgage with the bank and needed the last 5 or 6 months payslips, he can quickly log into Connect and download all his payslips and export them over towards the bank. Again, eliminating the need for you, the employer and your admin department, to have to print and email out all these payslips. So it really does save you a whole lot of time. So Matthew can easily click into his payslips, as you can see here, all the data, all populated by you, the employer, and you can simply click on to download and export. Before I go into calendar for the employees, I'll just click back into documents, because there's two subsections within the documents. There is the payroll documents, which we just seen, and then there is the HR documents and resources. So these are all the documents that are applicable to Matthew alone. So his company handbook and his Matthew's specific contract of employment that only Matthew can see, and his general company information. So any documents that you, the employer, wish to provide to your employees will all appear here for that employee. So the next tab I click into is the calendar tab. So this is where Matthew can view all his upcoming leave in the calendar. And if Matthew wishes to request leave, he can very easily do so by just clicking on the green tab here. And from the drop-down menu, he can select the dates that he wishes to request a leave from or for. The particular type of leave, be it annual leave, be paid leave, or if Matthew has run out of leave towards the end of the year, he can select unpaid leave, and he can do full day or half day, AM or PM. And the great thing also about this is that when Matthew is set up on the BrightPay Payroll Manager, he was allocated, in this example, his 20 days holiday leave. So from there, Connect, as I mentioned, will actually automatically deduct and can calculate the leave that has been taken, providing Matthew with his annual leave balance of his remaining leave. So Matthew, as I mentioned, can simply select a leave and put in any comments as to maybe why he's requesting the leave, and he can submit the request. And on his employer's dashboard, your dashboard, in this example, Alan's Offer Repairs, we can see on the notification where Matthew Ward has requested the leave. And I showed you the users earlier. In this example, Alan Sawyer, he was given permission to approve employee requests. So he can either simply approve or reject this request, maybe reject it and send it back to Matthew, notifying him that that leave maybe was not viable because another employee was off that day also. But in this example, we're just going to approve the leave. And it drops away from our notifications. And if we go back then into Matthew's calendar here, we can see where the 2 days have now populated onto his calendar, and now he has been approved for his leave. And it's as easy and as seamless as that. So really hugely powerful feature to have for employees at their fingertips. So the last tab for the employees is the My Details tab. So this is where Matthew can view all his details that his employer has for him, so his address and all his contact details. And if Matthew changed house at any stage and moved address, he can simply put in his new details for his address and click change. And then the person that's responsible for approving this changes will approve it, and it all automatically then updates and flows seamlessly back into your BrightPay Payroll Manager, again eliminating the need for you, the employer, to actually have to go in and manually do that. It's all done seamlessly in the background. So as I mentioned, the app is free to download on both iOS and Google for the employees onto their smartphone or tablet. And as this is how the logo looks on the smartphone. And when the employees, when the pay slips come in, they'll also get like notifications will come down, just like maybe notifications from their favorite news app. And so we can see here Alan's payslip is available, and he can click into that, and that will bring him into his dashboard on his mobile phone. And we can see here where we get, in this case, we've got Carla Byrne, and we have 4 tabs across the top, home being the terminology as opposed to dashboard on the PC version. But Carla can basically view all her employment details, and any notifications that come in at the bottom will appear there. And Carla can click into documents to access the payroll documents and the HR documents and resources. So by clicking onto payroll documents there, Carla can quickly view all her recent payslips, all stored there in chronological order. Carla can click onto the calendar tab here and view any upcoming leave that's coming in the calendar. And if Carla was at home and seen a great flights detail online over the weekend, Carla can simply click here on the plus sign to request a leave by doing so on the app. And Carla can also click onto the My Details and again view all the details that her employer has on her, so a PPS number, address, etc. And just before I actually leave the app, it's important to note also that the app, it's our own proprietary app. It's not a third-party provider. It's our own. We developed the app ourselves. So that really helps with your GDPR compliance, knowing where and how your employees' data is being stored and processed. So we'll just have a quick look at the pricing details for Connect, because in 2020 we are moving to a new subscription-based model where the Connect pricing will be based on usage, so the total number of active employees in the month. And we can see here, for example, if we had 1 employee, it would be a monthly cost of 50 cents. And so really hugely advantageous to the employers going forward. And we can see where significant economies of scale take into effect the more employees that we bring onto Connect. So really going forward, hugely advantageous for you, the employer. And in this example, I click in here with 10 employees, monthly cost of €3.90. So that's it from me today. Many thanks again for joining me on that. If you wish to get a more detailed look at Connect for both the Source and BrightPay, please make sure to book onto a demo once this webinar is finished by doing so in the survey, and you'll get a full overview again of all the functionality and features of Connect. So I'll just hand you back to Rachel again. Thank you very much for your time.
Perfect. Thanks, Tim. That was great. So next up we have the revenue presentation. So I'd like to welcome Sinead Sweeney from Revenue. Bear with us as we get the slides up.
Okay, good morning everybody. So we have quite a bit to get through, and there's a lot of slides and screenshots. So what I'm hoping to cover is what you can see there on the screen, and certainly I'm going to be focusing on the end of year changes, particularly for employees, and then running through the transitioning between 2019 and 2020. So I suppose just in terms of going back to where it all began and where we are now, we had 3 key deliverables that we wanted to achieve, which were for employers, employees, and obviously for ourselves in Revenue. And the main objective was that we would have seamless integration with payroll. And as you can see from our little time ball there, we are 3/4 of the way there. I would say actually we're probably nearer to 90% of the way there. And as Paul already explained, we have seen extensive engagement by employers with the new process. We've also wanted to minimise the cost for employers to comply, and certainly the feedback that we've been getting from employers would indicate that that has been made possible by abolishing all of the P forms and also all of the admin that was involved in just putting together the PAYE for year end, in particular doing the P35, but also creating P60s for all of the employees. We're also seeing the right tax being paid on the current due dates, and ultimately that is resulting in time savings for employers, with the biggest time saving coming now towards the end of the year when they don't have to do a P35 for the current year. For employees then, we wanted simplified online services, and we want them to maximise the use of their entitlements. And we have developed and enhanced the existing My Account facilities, and we're now going to do an automatic end of year review for every employee in 2020. Employees now have real-time accurate data, and they can log on and see exactly what is returned, every submission that's made by their employer, representing every time that they have been paid. And this certainly gives them a new level of transparency, whereby if, for instance, they're working for an employer who is deducting pay and tax but not returning it to Revenue, they can log on and see that, and they can either contact ourselves or contact the employer to get that reflected correctly. For ourselves in Revenue then, the statutory in-year return has been happening since January, so we now have a monthly returns process. There isn't an end of year process. Every month is the same as the month before, so it's month on month. It has made compliance easier from our perspective, but we're not in compliance mode at the moment. We're currently in what I would call assistance mode, where we are helping and encouraging employers to get things right. But that isn't going to last forever, so I would encourage employers to act on any corrections that they need to do and make sure that their liabilities are reflected accurately. We do have accurate income details for all employees, and we have seen a reduction in customer contacts, particularly on our employer helplines, where the numbers have reduced dramatically as employers and payroll operators have become more familiar with the system. Timely targeted interventions, as you can see there, is blank, and that's because, as I said, we're in assistance mode, but that won't last forever. Just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with and the stats from December to November this year, we have accumulated total gross salaries of over 88 billion. We've received over 72 million payslips, with over 5.2 million completed submissions being made by employers. That represents 2.89 million employees who have had their pay and tax details reported to us. And there are, as Paul said, 177,000 employers now reporting in the electronic mechanisms that have been provided to them. We did have somebody who did their submission to us on Christmas Day, and the average response time to payroll software is in and around 0.5 seconds. We do have a data integrity project, and this team has been set up, and they're based in Tala, and they have members from all of the divisions in revenue working together to review the data that has been submitted by employers. Where recurring issues have been identified, the team works with the employer and also with the software providers to rectify the issues. If a software fix is required, the software providers have been asked to provide a time frame to implement their proposed solution. So the team are contacting engaged employers by phone or in person to assist them with their data quality review. Once the review has been carried out, then they will be given a time frame to make corrections, and then the data will be reviewed again by the team to ensure that the corrections have been put in place. So this data team started in June of 2019, but it will continue on into 2020. So as Paul went through there, some of the issues that we're seeing. So there's the list in terms of what we're currently looking at. Now, it's not a totally exclusive list. If other issues present, we will obviously look at those as well while we're out there, but all related to data. We're not out there doing an audit. It is a data integrity conversation that needs to be held with the revenue staff that turn up. So you can see there is quite a lot of issues. Some of them are genuine and bona fide. Some of them are because maybe the software or the payroll operator hasn't been putting things into the submission correctly. So I'm not going to get into those because Paul has gone through the key ones there with you. We do have a corrections document that's available, and that's there online. If you log on to the revenue website, and that's the link there. So when we send you out the slides there, you'll actually be able to use that link and log in and see the corrections document. I've just taken some items from the corrections document just to show you what it looks like. So you can see there's 4 main correction types, and most of them can be reported in the next payroll event. The key one there is number 3, so something that has happened that cannot be fixed in the next payroll event, and that means you must go in and correct the original submission. So it is important that employers make the corrections by amending the original submission and not deleting the original submission, because if you delete the original submission, that could result in an amendment to your actual statement or to your statutory return, or it could cause commencement or cessation issues, and it could mean that the employee's tax credits are reassigned to maybe another employment that they have online with revenue. So the errors are returned via the payroll software, but they're also visible on ROS to the employer, and it is imperative that all employers and agents review and correct errors to ensure that the statements are correct. Errors that are not corrected may result in an understatement or overstatement of the employer's liability and will not be reflected accurately on the employee record. If there are any balances outstanding, debt collection will always proceed as it has by our Collector General's department. Employees must be able to reconcile the information that's on my account with the details on their payslip, and that's why it's so important that the information is correct. The information reported by employers will also be included in the employees' end-of-year details and statements. So that statement will be used by the employees if they're going for a bank loan or for a grant. So it is crucial that that information is correct. So just to run through some of the enhancements for my account in 2019, particularly focusing on what the employees can now view and see. So all of this information is available in the Manage My Tax card in my account, and employees can view and print their pay and statutory deductions in real time as reported by their employer. The pay and statutory deductions are only reported, so we don't take details of any personal deductions. So for instance, if somebody was making a credit union payment, or maybe are paying into a savings club or a sports and social fund, we will not be capturing that information. So the information may not match exactly what is on the person's payslip. So to date, we've had over 135,000 people log on and view their payslip, and that facility hasn't actually been advertised. So people are logging on and using the My Account facilities. We've also seen employees contacting Revenue where when they log on, their information isn't available to them. And we have been following up with those employers and also with the employee to ensure that their information is reflected accurately. There are mechanisms for referring these types of items through My Inquiries or over the phone. So when somebody logs on in PAYE services, they're bringing to the first menu, which shows them an overview, and this is their current tax position. So it shows their current employment and what their current tax credits are. If they have more than one employment there, it will list each employment, and if an employment ceased during 2019, it will also show the ceased employment, but instead of being active, it will say ceased. So when they click on the little red box that I've highlighted there, the view, it brings them into their pay and tax details year to date. So you can see there what the gross pay, the pay for income tax, pay for USC, etc. is. Down the bottom then, I've just shown 3 months of the payroll submission there, but that's each month that this person has been paid, what the employer has reported for them. There are little infographics there to explain what gross pay, pay for income tax and pay for USC are, and if you click on any of those, this is what you will see. And there's also some learn more links there, which brings them into the Revenue website, and it explains how pay for income tax is calculated and pay for USC. So there's also a reference details screen there, but as you can see there, the reference details just basically tells them what the reference is, and if they need to refer that to their employer, then they can use the reference details so that their employer can find which payroll submission they're referring to. So there are other self-service options available on My Account, and they include now being able to claim an unemployment repayment online, being able to update your civil status, divide credits and rate bands equally between 2 employments, or upload supporting documentation for certain claims. Employees can also now create a summary of their pay and tax information in PDF format, and that summary can contain their payroll details as reported by their employer for the year to date, their payroll details as reported by their employer for the previous 1 to 3 months, and any end of year statements for the previous 4 years. So the PDF can be digitally signed by Revenue and password protected. There's clear instructions online with an easy to follow process, and customers can then make this available electronically to any third party that so requires it. So if, for instance, they're going for a mortgage with the bank, they can now electronically send this information directly to the bank. Relevant third parties are aware of this new facility, so they will know that the employee is going to send the information electronically. In order to access that information, it's in PAYE services. You must be registered on My Account to access the information. So you click on create a summary of your pay and tax details. And then on the screen, you can see there's a list of instructions on how to actually do this. And down the bottom then in the little red box that I've highlighted, you click on create a summary. So it allows you then to decide what information you want to put into this summary. So if, for instance, you just want to send 2018, you'll simply click on the tick box for 2018. In this example, I've clicked on the 4 years just to show you that that's possible. It then click next, and it brings you into pay and tax details year to date. And then it asks you, do you want to include your pay and tax details year to date? So obviously you're going to click yes there. And then you can decide how much payroll information you want to give them. So is it 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months? And you can see there it's highlighting 3 months of payroll information. So you click next and it gives you an opportunity to review what you have put into that summary. So you can see there it's given the 4 years, the pay and tax details for that employment, and payroll details for the months that you have selected. So then you confirm that everything is okay, click create summary, and it'll tell you that this is the password for that summary, and then you can go and download that summary, and it explains to you how to share that information. So if you want to go back and look at that summary that you've created, you click on view previous summaries, and it brings you in there and shows you exactly what you have created and when you created it. And you may need to create a new summary, particularly if you're going for a bank loan and that information might only be valid for a 3-month period. So you might need to go back in and create a new summary, or maybe you want to send the same summary to several banks. You can do that by clicking on the view. It shows you what you've created, it gives you the password, and it explains how to use that password. And if you want to print it down just as a PDF, this is what it's going to look like. So it's an official document with the HARP, etc. on it. And it shows the payroll details that have been selected for that particular period. That's what the P21 looks like if you want to go and print that down. So that's available there as well. The employment details summary then is what's going to replace the P60. So it'll probably be shortened to an EDS by the time we get to it in January. So employment details summary will replace the form P60. It'll be made available to all PAYE customers online from Revenue in January 2020. It will contain payroll information for each employment as reported by employers. It will include an employment ID. There is the option to create a PDF to save and print it for users, and it can be used in the same way as the P60 for verification of income for financial institutions, the HSE or county councils. So it is very important that you encourage all of your users to register online for My Account, because this will be the easiest way to access the information. If they are not e-enabled, they will be able to contact us by phone or call into one of the public offices, and we will provide the employment details summary for them at that point of contact. So in order to view it, and this is what it's going to look like, obviously it's not there yet because it will be in respect of the entire year 2019. So if we concentrate on the second box there, you can see employment details summary, and we've highlighted the view. So when you click on the view, it brings you in to your pay and tax details for that particular employment. If you have more than one employment, each employment will be listed there, and you can create a document for each employment. If you want to go in and view your job or pension details, it brings you in similarly to what I've shown you there, and it shows all of the payroll submissions. So if you're weekly, fortnightly or monthly paid, it will show each payroll submission, and it will show your cumulative pay, tax and PRSI details for the year. If you go to print it, this is what it's going to look like in terms of the actual summary information itself. We then have a new process, and that's called a statement of liability. And this statement will be made available from the 15th of January 2020, and it will be based on the income details reported by all employers during the year. It will show a preliminary result, and that will be either balanced, overpaid or underpaid. In order to complete an income, in order to get your statement of liability, you will have to complete an income tax return, and that will mean you'll receive your statement of liability, or you can claim a refund of tax, or you can claim any additional reliefs or credits such as health expenses, or if you want to declare additional income or change your existing credits or declared income, you'll be able to do that all online. So if we go back now to the review your tax screen again, you can see there's a top box, and in that top box it now shows that you can request this. So when you click on request, it brings you into your preliminary end of year result. Now in this case it shows this person is overpaid by €200, and this means that they're due a refund of €200 from Revenue. But in order to activate that refund, they have to complete their income tax return, and it's an e-income tax return, so it's an online income tax return. It will show the breakdown of how that refund has come about, and it'll also show what USD was calculated in terms of the full calculation in terms of their tax liability. Then asks you how you'd like to proceed. So if you want to go ahead and activate that refund, you're going to click on complete your income tax return. If the statement was balanced and you don't have anything else to claim, you can simply click back and just exit out of the system. You don't need to do anything. So in terms of transitioning then between 2019 and 2020, and this is our full year in terms of how we've managed each monthly return, etc. So the key things to note that as employers or payroll agents, you do not need to provide a P60 at the end of the year for any of your employees. Revenue will now be providing the employment detail summary, and it will be made available to all employees via my account in January 2020. You also don't have to do a P35. There is no end of year return process. So every month you've been doing your monthly submissions and looking at your monthly statement, and that has then become your monthly return. So there isn't an end of year process. January is exactly the same as March or April. So there's no end of year process. 2019 RPNs will be updated in real time up until the end of 2019. And we would encourage all of you to look at choosing the variable direct debit option, as it's the most convenient method to ensure that your liabilities are paid on time. So we're also asking employers not to make payroll submissions with the 2020 pay date until the 2020 RPNs have been made available, because otherwise emergency tax will be applied to those submissions. Ensure that the 2020 tax year is included in your header submission for any 2020 payroll submissions that you're making. You cannot include payment dates that are for 2019 and 2020 in the same payroll submission, so you need to make sure that you submit those on separate submissions. The RPNs for 2020 will be made available in early December 2019. The 2020 RPNs will not be updated in real time until 2020. You must ensure that the correct RPNs are requested. If the payment date is in 2020, then you must use a 2020 RPN. 2020 RPNs will include any budget updates and any changes to the individual's case based on 2019 income, e.g. the removal of PAYE USC exemptions if thresholds are exceeded. You cannot use a 2019 RPN in 2020, and that's part of the income tax regulations as per the Finance Act 2018. You are legally obliged to request and operate the latest RPN, even if the tax credits on that RPN are zero. RPNs should be requested for all employees under each employer registration number for the first payroll run of 2020. If no 2020 RPN is available under the lookup RPN, then follow the normal process, i.e. request a new RPN for that employee. If no RPN is available, then emergency tax must be operated. I've just put up an example there of how somebody that is on emergency tax in 2019 and continues to be on emergency tax into 2020, and how those emergency tax weeks are applied, because they don't just start afresh in 2020. Emergency tax weeks run concurrent as long as they're on emergency tax. So you can see there that this person has provided their employer with their PPSN number, but they haven't registered with revenue. So this is their first employment in the state. So they commence work in week 46 of 2019 and leave in week 5 of 2020. The emergency tax basis applies throughout those weeks. So weeks 46 to 49 are the first 4 weeks of the employment for the purposes of the emergency procedure. Weeks 50 and 52 are weeks 5, 6 and 7. And then weeks 1 to 4 of 2020 are weeks 8, 9 and 10, 11 of the emergency procedure. When reporting without a PPSN, it is mandatory to use an employer reference number, and this should not be changed between 2019 and 2020. The name should also not be changed, as revenue will use this for matching purposes. When the PPSN is updated, it should be reported along with the employer reference number. And Revenue will use the employer reference number and the PPSN to match and link any previous payroll submission details. Employment IDs will roll forward automatically and will be included on the first RPNs of 2020, and payroll operators and software should not change the employee's employment ID from year to year. Some enhancements for 2020 which will be of benefit to employers. For 2020 onwards, Revenue will mark RPNs for ceased employees when they return all RPNs. So now employers will be able to distinguish which RPNs are for ceased employees and which are for live employees. To facilitate the Section 985B end of year settlement payments, a new payment type will be available on ROS, and this will allow a payment to be made once the settlement has been approved by Revenue. So in terms of employee engagement then, we have had ongoing employee engagement sessions based with employers, government departments, public bodies. We've delivered some public events in the libraries, and we've also met with all the citizens information staff. And that's really to encourage employees to go online and to make sure that they'll be able to access their end of year details in an online format. There will be detailed information on the employee 2020 tax credit certs, again pointing the employees to registering online and to be able to access their end of year details. There'll also be a media campaign in December running right through into January, and it'll be on radio, press and social media. The team are also available to visit employers on site to provide a session for their employees, and some employers have been opting for a lunch and learn session, others have been opting to have us on site for the day and maybe run 4 sessions in a day to ensure that all their staff become familiar with the end of year changes. If anybody's interested in doing that, you can contact Isabel MacDonald, and that's her email address there on screen. It's imacdon@revenue.ie to arrange same. There is a huge amount of information on the website for employees, and you should be directing them to the website if they have questions or queries under PAYE Modernisation for employees, but there's a plethora of information there available that can help them with most of the queries that they'll have. In terms of information for employers, then the employer's guide will continue to be updated, and obviously it will be updated with the end of year changes as well in January. There is a hot topics section on Revenue. We have issued some reminder e-briefs to employers to encourage them to be familiar with their obligations and the consequences of having inaccurate data and late submissions. The hot topics looks like that, and that is updated by the employer's helpline where they feel that something is a recurring problem. They will create a hot topic, so it's available there. We also have the ROS help desk, and that's important if people are having technical difficulties with ROS, or maybe if they have queries around their digital certificates, etc. That's the link there for the ROS help desk. And in terms of just contacting the employer's help desk, then we have the phone numbers there, and again PAYE Modernisation is available on the Revenue website. So that's it from myself today. I'll hand you back to Rachel. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Sinead. It's now time for the questions and answers, and I see there are some questions that have come in already. If you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the questions box on the control panel, and we will try to get through as many as we can. So just bear with us now for a few seconds. We're just going to get the questions open and get the webcam turned on as well. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to get started with the questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question there is PRSI regarding age. Is it up to the employer to make sure that they have people's dates of births, you know, so that they're on the right PRSI class, or to Revenue correct this or notify them through the RPN?
Well, it is up to the employer to make sure that they have accurate details on file when they're setting somebody up and when they're registering. And also, there is an onus on the employee to make sure that their revenue records are correct as well. We do review them, and as part of that review reconciliation that we're going to do in year, we will be reviewing those as well. But in general, they should try and have the dates of birth correct. The person generally will contact us, and we will amend it at that point anyway. You know, if they log on and they realise well, actually I'm 66 now, and they should have the exemption there.
Okay.
I don't think there is actually any field for PRSI class on the RPN, is there? As far as I remember.
Don't think PRSI comes back on it. Or there isn't.
No.
It was there for when revenue, or did they scrap it? It was meant to be there for when revenue did a review. For example, somebody should be on S.
I'm not sure now because I haven't seen the actual RPN.
I'll have to
per
check
se.
that out, yeah.
I suppose it's in an employee's interest to give the date of birth
Absolutely.
and for the employer to put it in on the software, and then, it'll look after the rest really. So this is just an employee amended their RPN details through my account after the payroll was complete for October. When the PSR was submitted, the response of the PSR should accept it with warnings because the RPN is out of date. Will this be sorted when November's payroll is processed?
Well, I suppose from a software point of view, when they go to do the next payroll, they should be acting on the latest RPN. So that should bring in whatever the
I
correct.
suppose it's always what you say,
Exactly.
to do the check the RPNs as close as possible to running the payroll.
Absolutely.
And I suppose if you submit at the same time, there's very little chance of.
Yeah.
The
And
warning.
I mean,
Yeah.
it can just change overnight. So somebody could be running payroll on Friday and they may have requested the RPNs on Thursday, but there may have been a change
Absolutely.
and the person may have gone on and done something that has caused the change. So they should really check as they're running the payroll.
Yeah, and I suppose if they submit more or less at the same time as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Tim, just somebody asking there, can an employee cancel leave that's requested off? So this is for Connect.
Yeah, actually, a good question. Yeah, it can actually be done short by either the employer or the employee. So the employer can actually go in and go into that employee's calendar and cancel that leave request. Now, the employee can also do it, but by default, all employees are set up as not being able to do that. So you will just have to go into the settings tab and configure employee settings and tick the box enabling employees to be able to cancel leave requests. So from there, then they can actually, cancel.
Perfect. Thank you, Tim. Somebody's just asking, how do you know if an employee ceased employment with you if they've not notified you but have just not turned up for work? I suppose this is probably going back to what we touched on earlier on. So I suppose that when we're talking about ceasing, we mean ceased with revenue. There's no way to see that at the moment, but the 2020 RPN will have cessation date.
There's a new field in the 2020 RPN,
So there'll be a lot more, I suppose, a lot more clarity next year.
I suppose that comes back to business processes as well, and particularly maybe where, the HR department is not connected to the payroll department, and maybe, there needs to be a little business process put in place there that if somebody has left, that they're informed straight away, because it does have an impact on how the payroll is going to be run.
Perfect. Sinead, a few questions for you. These are all from the same person. Four, I think we'll go through them one at a time. Do all employees have to file a tax return? I know you actually covered this after the question was raised, but just in case, in order to get tax back or pay an underpayment of tax.
Yes, they will have to, in order to correct their records, they will have to do an online eForm 12, will be required,
Will revenue post the P60 replacement to those employees who do not have my account?
Only where they actually request it. We're not going to
happen
do
automatically.
a mass posting of P60s, and that's why we're encouraging everybody who can to register for my account. Other than that, they'll have to contact us by phone or pop into one of the offices, and we will give it to them at that point.
Perfect. Where revenue have previously said BIK adjustments can be corrected in the following month, for example, BIK on cars, shares, etc. Will this be applicable for the December-January payroll, or will all 2019 adjustments need to be applied by January 15th?
No, it's the same, it's month on month, so there's no issue with that.
Okay.
It's a good question. I know that came up an awful lot during the initial discussions on PMod, and that was one of the issues that I suppose that a lot of people are going to have a problem with, in trying to just reconcile
their year end,
the BIK
well.
and mileage and all that sort of thing by the 31st of December. But I guess there was no real movement on it, that they do have to do it.
You do have to do it, and in order for them to be able to reconcile their own records, they need it to have the figure in for the end of the year. So it's the same.
The next question from the same gentleman, it's just the resubmission of a PSR, e.g. a correction, form the submission date for late payment penalty. So in other words, if they filed the original on time, but then filed a correction submission late, after.
It'll depend on the nature of what has been filed and what has taken place really, but at the moment, penalties, etc., are not in place. So if they need to make a correction, do it now. Is what I would say. But again, it'll depend on what's actually happened there. And if it was a blatant abuse of PAYE, obligations, well then that's going to incur a penalty. That'll incur a penalty now, even if we go out there and we're detecting that somebody just hasn't complied at all and hasn't done anything. But where somebody has made an effort and they've identified something that maybe was incorrect and they've gone back in to try and correct it, at the moment we're trying to help them to assist that, and so that it kind of changes the behaviour and it doesn't happen again.
Is there something as well about when they actually make the correction that it was before the month is deemed to be
Absolutely,
return,
absolutely.
which is what, the 15th of the following
15th of the following month.
So they managed to get the correction in before then.
15th.
But then
that's
there wouldn't be any
updating.
interest anyway in that case.
And that's just then updating what was already submitted.
Okay. The statement of liability will be made available from the 15th of January. Will the employee's employment detail summary be made available from the same date, or will that be available earlier in January?
The employee's detail summary will be available in January, but again, like everybody's payroll should have been submitted to us at that stage if they've been paid. So that'll be available, but there may be changes or anything like that, and the employer can do that up until the 15th, 14th of January. So really, it's probably best to wait until the 15th, but it will be available from the 1st of January, where the employer has reported all of the information.
Okay. Somebody's just saying they're wondering about the last payroll of 2019. This will be processed after January 1, 2020. Will the RPN automatically be the 2019, or will a manual adjustment into source be required? I'm confused about this. So I suppose the thing that jumps out for me there is the last payroll of 19, but it would be processed after the 1st of January. So then it's a 2020 payment, and it's a 2020 RPN and PSR and so on.
So really what they need to look at there is their own business process and see, can they make that payment in 2019 in week 52 of 2019. So, it's crucial that they look at that now.
Okay. Somebody's just asking, will BrightPay Connect work with a completely different payroll package? So no, it will only work with BrightPay. Somebody's just asking, do they get notification when their digital certs are due to expire?
Yeah, Revenue do send a reminder.
Yeah, and we
I
also
know the software also
as well.
prompts it. Yeah, within 90 days, I think, of the expiry.
Somebody's just saying they've got staff who take unpaid leave during school holidays. Do they cease them and re-employ them each time?
No, they would just leave them on the payroll. If they're only taking 4, 6, 8 weeks and they know they're coming back to them, they just leave them on the payroll, but they don't put anything in.
Yeah.
So there'll be a zero for those weeks if they're not getting any pay.
They need to sign on to DASP, need to say that employment has ceased, or is there a different system?
They might need to give
like a
letter or something like that to say that the person is on unpaid leave. But the individual can go on and print down the payroll submission, which will show that they're not getting any money for that period anyway.
Perfect. Week 1 for 2020, can you only submit the payroll in that week? We are closed until the 2nd of January, which is payday. So no, it can be submitted in advance. Payroll payment will be made on January 2nd, which is 2020, but the RPN will be downloaded on the 30th of December. Will the 2020 RPN be available at that date? So yeah. They'll be available from the first week in December.
First week in December, yeah.
Somebody's just asking, week 1 basis, I suppose, comes up quite a bit. So this person just asking, is it up to the employer to notify the employee when they've been put on a week 1 basis? So I suppose it's generally because the employee has done something with you.
Yeah, it's generally because something has happened in the background that's caused a week 1, or maybe they've gotten a payment from DASP or something like that. So if you know the person's on a week 1, advise them and that they should contact us, and then if it needs to be rectified, we'll rectify it.
Somebody's just asking, Sinead, is there a memo available from Revenue that employers could distribute to staff encouraging them to register online for my account?
Yeah, I don't have a memo per se, but I do have sort of an information pack blog, for want of a better word, whereby we can send that out to anybody that wants it, and they can use it on their own in-house intranet, or as you had suggested, Audrey, yesterday, that maybe they might use the text box on the.
Could use the payslip note,
to include it there, and certainly we can provide the links on how to register, etc. So if anybody wants that, they can contact Isabel again. The email address is in the slides there. So they can contact Isabel and we can arrange for that information to be sent out.
I know one of the things we're planning to do as well within our software in December is the year-end menu we're going to include, and that will have links to my account setting up and any videos you guys have.
And we'll have videos, yeah.
Perfect. I suppose this is another question which is kind of a repeat, but just that the pay align week. So again, if the payment is on the 3rd of January, that's week 1 of 2020, and using the 2020 RPM. So a question for Tim. On Connect, can the leave be recorded as hours instead of days?
Yeah, so actually on BrightPay, there's an option in the BrightPay Payroll Manager. If you select leave for a number of hours worked, irregular hours, it'll actually populate on Connect in hours, so they can request hours off and their leave will appear in hours.
Yes, this was the key, just to make sure they're on the hourly entitlement within the software.
Exactly, yeah, otherwise it will just default to normal leave.
Another one about the pay dates of a client who processed the payroll a month in arrears in December. December pay slips are paid in January. Can I still use the RPM for 19? So I mean, if they're paid in January, it's 2020 across the board.
Yeah, so again, it's back to business processes and trying to get something in place now so that you pay it at the end of December if it's a 2019 payroll run. Otherwise, you just put it into 2020 and it becomes the 2020 week 1 payroll.
Again, people just worried about the RPMs for 2020 and do the payroll early, so just to reiterate that they will be available from the first week in December.
Yeah.
This is not really to do PMOT, but an employee wants to start paying their LPT through the payroll. Is it up to the employer to notify revenue? So it's up to the employee to notify revenue, and revenue will notify the employer on the RPM. So. Tim, another question for you there. Can you delete a user that has been set up on Connect?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can. Now, the user cannot delete themselves, and it's only the administrator that will be able to delete that user then, yeah. But the option is there, yeah.
Perfect. Paul, will BrightPay be taken over from Thesaurus, or will the information of both link to each other?
I suppose, it really depends on Microsoft, and you know, I suppose at some stage, Thesaurus Payroll Manager, the technology isn't as advanced or up to date as BrightPay. So, you know, maybe 5-6 years down the road, Thesaurus Payroll Manager may have to, you know, cease. Might have to retire.
As a follow on from that, I don't actually know if it's the same person because the way I'm filtering the questions, but somebody's just saying that they're using Thesaurus, and are there advantages of using BrightPay over Thesaurus?
Well, you're probably the best person to answer that. You're the support manager. Yeah, go on, you go.
I suppose BrightPay probably is more flexible. You know, it does have the ability for a big thing that comes up is just spreading an employee's pay across multiple departments in a pay period, where Thesaurus is restricted to one department per pay period. There's a report writer there, if you like to call it, where you can very easily, you know, design your own reports. There's increased payroll frequencies. It is more flexible, but we still all.
So I should really retire now. I suppose the other thing, in fairness as well, I should say, is that with Connect. The communication between BrightPay and Connect is two-way communication. So, for example, when Tim was showing, say, the employee changing their address details, that will automatically flow back down into the BrightPay payroll software, whereas they do it on Thesaurus Connect. It basically just send a notification through to whoever's responsible for that sort of thing, and they will need to manually
update,
put it into the Thesaurus Payroll Manager. So that's it. Yeah, it is more, I suppose, technologically advanced, especially when it comes to the integration with Connect.
Sinead, if an employee owes tax, but they're not registered for my account, how will they be notified?
Yeah, we'll be following up on all of those, and if they haven't come and made a payment, then we will reduce their credits in the next year, so their credits will be reduced by the amount that they owe us in order to collect it, but they will be advised of that. So the easiest way to do it is come to us and, you know, either if you have a refund or if you have underpaid, you can manage it straight away. You can make a payment online, or we can deduct the credits, reduce the credits.
Same as employers, just engage with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because they've just asked what will happen if they don't take anything. So yeah, it'll be a reduction in credits. Somebody's just asking what's the cost difference between Tesaurus and BrightPay. So there is none. The pricing model is the same, and the same for Connect as well. Tim, just another one for you there. Can you edit a user at a later date in Connect? I suppose, can you enter their, or can you edit their privileges, or, you know?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question, because as we're all very well aware, businesses, you know, they're ever-changing environments where staff members' roles and responsibilities, I suppose, can change depending. So yeah, if a user has been set up, you can actually just say one staff member gets a new promotion, and rather than just being able to approve employee requests, now needs to see access to payslips, etc. You could actually go back and retick that box again and make the changes, so you can update the users.
It's just the administrator
can do that. Yeah. That's a good question.
Perfect. Somebody's just asking, if the property tax is deducted in the payroll, when will it be allocated to the property tax?
They're allocated year end, but because it's an annual amount, but I mean, it's allocated in our record straight away, but it is a year end process.
I've had that issue lately. Recently, I think I was selling a property, and the LPT had to be up to date. Now I had it deducted at source, so I knew it was up to date, but yet I actually had to go and give a check physically to actually pay it.
Okay.
Because it wasn't on the system or whatever. I hadn't transferred across from LPT to revenue, whatever.
It's not a real time.
No, it's not. It's not real time per se. No, but I suppose they are looking at that. But it is. You see, it's based on the previous year. That's how the LPT is managed. So you know, when you log on, like, people are getting reminders now to pay for 29th
November.
Yeah, exactly. So it won't be accumulated until then.
So I must remember to check, but I never got a refund of that.
Because
I did actually have to pay 2000. I think it was 2018 at the time. I had to pay it twice.
Okay.
Somebody's just asking, will changes made by the employee be recorded in BrightPay in case details were incorrect? Where to check who submitted the wrong data? So I assume this is for Connect, if they've typed in something wrong and it's fed into BrightPay.
Yeah, so that's it. Yeah, well, all requests made by employees are all in the audit trail. So so under the cog wheel there, on the notifications, they can go in and see who approved the request and when.
Yeah, where it came from.
Yeah.
Can two departments be set up under the one company? If yes, can reports be sent to two different managers according to the departments? I'm not sure whether that's BrightPay or Tesaurus, but yeah, you can run reports by department.
Yes, and I don't know, again, I don't know what the question maybe might relate to Connect.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually.
Yeah, must be, but
and normally with departments that Connect, I suppose you'd only give access to the person that needs it, so you know, you'd only have access to your own
and
department.
that can be done.
Yeah.
That is Connect.
Yeah, but this is, I don't know, because it's be sent to two different people.
Just to clarify it there.
Oh, BrightPay Connect. Sorry, I didn't. Okay.
Yes, you can filter by department.
Yeah, so then when they log in, they'll only have access to their own department. Yeah, perfect. So it's just saying, where staff are paid in advance at the beginning of the month, should a separate return be submitted, or will the one monthly submission be sufficient, assuming it is including the full amount received?
Well, what I would say is advances are a no-no, and where an advance has been paid, it has to be reported on the date that it's been paid. So if that means you have to do 2 submissions, well, then you have to do 2 submissions. Other than that, the advance is treated as notional pay in this BIK, and it's a preferential loan, and there's BIK applied to it for the intervening period. So what I would suggest is that no advances are paid, and it's something that will be looked at when we go out to start doing compliance, and we will be following that right back to the payments in terms of from the bank, etc., and into the person's payroll, account.
Okay. Another one for you, Tim. When an employee leaves, how long do they have access to their Connect account?
Okay, yeah, that's actually one that comes up quite a lot. So there's actually no set date for how long they can have access to that account. So what normally will happen is the employer will come to an agreement with that employee. Usually talking to different employers and stuff, normally the period is given about 2 weeks where that employee can still log into their Connect and take down all their pay slips, etc., before you can just terminate their account.
Perfect, thank you. Somebody's just asking, is it easy to change from Thesaurus to BrightPay? Is the operation much different? I suppose it is easy to change. There's a dedicated, I suppose, help section and utility for dealing with that change. And I suppose we probably advise anybody who wants to change maybe to go to BrightPay demo, to familiarise themselves with how it works. I suppose it looks quite different.
And the ideal time to change as well is the 1st of January.
Yeah, but it's very user friendly as well. It's just getting used to a new system. Somebody just wants to know, on Thesaurus, can block payments be made from 2 different bank accounts? Because the only way you can have 2 different bank accounts is if you have 2 different pay frequencies, but there's only 1 bank account per pay frequency. Yeah. Actually, on BrightPay you can't. So
you can.
You can have more than, you can have multiple employer bank accounts.
So another tick for BrightPay.
Another tick for BrightPay. Yeah.
That retirement date
is
looking closer and closer, Paul.
Be lucky to see January. Somebody's just asking, and again, I have to assume that this is TPM, but just saying that they're using the holiday calculator, and if somebody's working pattern changes, they go from 4 days to 3, then when the change in it backdates it. And unfortunately, the calculator really can only cater for one, I suppose, working pattern per year. Yes, otherwise, there's a manual adjustment. So.
Is BrightPay okay with that?
Yeah, you probably could change the working pattern and probably should update it, but you'd have to go into the calendar and just change it,
Yeah.
Can you please clarify how welfare benefits will interact with the payroll via RPNs? Will the tax status be adjusted to week 1? Will the tax credits be amended, etc.?
Yeah, so I suppose you'll have seen those coming in, Audrey, in terms of the RPNs where maybe somebody has received illness benefit. It may not happen in the actual week or the week after that the person has been out, because they may not have actually sent their medical information into the Department of Social Protection, or there might be a delay in DEASP actually processing it. But yes, in certain cases it will result in a week 1, and again it depends on how the illness benefit is being treated in the office as well, because some people pay their full salary, some people don't get any salary and only get illness benefit, some people get a proportion. So again, it's all based on what's actually been reported. But you'll have seen RPNs coming in with it on it.
Yes, and we have also seen, I suppose, where employees were out sick and the employer was receiving the illness benefit, because it's set to go into their bank account and nothing is actually done on the payroll. They're not recording it. And again, I suppose it's always harder to fix that the longer it's left, So like anything like that, I suppose, just to act on it as quickly as possible.
we get a feed from Department of Social Protection, and then we will update the RPNs as soon as they advise us.
Yeah, perfect. That's all the questions. A couple of other ones about the pay dates, but we've really covered them already. So.
Okay, well,
thanks very much.
That's it, I think, and thank you, Sinead, once again for coming in and helping out, and Audrey for your knowledge. And Tim, thank you.
Pleasure.
And Rachel for dealing with everything in the background there. Thank you. Okay, talk to you again next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.